retail business. It's a $1.2 trillion industry in terms of vehicle sales and the whole ecosystem. Massive industry. 1 in 10 people buy a car each year, roughly. It used to be second largest purchase the average consumer makes. Today, some laugh and say it's the largest purchase because no one's buying homes. Today, we're at, across my platforms, around like 700,000 followers. Here's the key, right? I don't really care about follower count almost at all today. I care about quality of the follower, right? So I have, say, 50,000 or so who are either high net worth decision makers of multi-million dollar businesses, dealerships, some billionaires in there, people that manage millions of dollars of budgets annually. Those are the people that I care about.
Chelsea, thanks for coming on the show, man. It's been crazy to see you grow throughout the years. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you used to be Pseudonymous online, right? Like you didn't show your face or your name. It was just car dealership guy.
Yeah, that's how it all started. Just a pseudonym and having some fun on the internet. And it was not something serious at all.
So you just like, do you have a fascination with like cars and, the auto industry, or how did you create the X account? I think that's where it all started, right?
Yeah, the key is just tapping into what you know. I have been a car dealer for 13 years,
Oh, okay.
and I ran a small car dealership, family owned. I ran a large car dealership that was venture backed, with investors and kind of, big and a big time
Yeah.
national presence. So I saw these two different spectrums throughout my experience. I I had exposure to lots of smart people, interesting things, and they 1 in 10 people buy a car each year, roughly. So people are always buying cars. It's something we all do at one point in our lifetime. It used to be the second largest purchase the average consumer makes. Today, some laugh and say it's the largest purchase because no one's buying homes,
That's true.
or at least average people are not, right? And so cars is a big deal in people's lives. And I started just sharing insights candidly about what I was experiencing on a day-to-day basis as a dealer, as a CEO of a dealer group. And that's how everything really took off early on. It was very candid, very authentic, and without much strategy.
I remember seeing those threads in my feed all the time, and they would go crazy viral. But like, what are some of the themes that would really perform well for you and that helped you grow that audience in the beginning?
So look, early on, car dealership guy in our content strategy, and I say our because today we are the leading media platform in auto retail, right? So when you think about the auto retail business, it's a $1.2 trillion industry in terms of
Yeah.
vehicle sales and the whole ecosystem. It's a massive industry. Our platform today targets dealers, but that it's not how it started. When I started, I was really creating consumer focused content. Again, wasn't much strategy behind it. It was just sharing stuff that was getting impressions, right? And at the time, it was, say, even 0 to 10,000 followers, it was literally like tips on buying cars. That was the easiest, lowest hanging fruit for me to tap into my knowledge and expertise and gain an audience that was interested. That evolved over time. I'm happy to kind of walk you through that evolution if you're interested. But that was the first, call it 0 to 10 or 25,000 followers. And then, I would say like 25 to 100,000, I started tapping into industry professionals, the finance community, investors who were interested in my background in this industry and what I know about the car business. From 100 plus, again, you start going even broader into academia, journalists, and of course, dealers. And I mean, the rest is history. But at every stage, as a creator, as a media business, we sort of kept reinventing and saying, okay, who are we creating content for? Right? What's the most interesting to me? What's the most durable? And how do we do that as best as possible? And so today, when you go to our website, dealershipguide.com, the hook is literally where 55,000 dealers start their day, right? But if you go back 2.5, 3 years ago, it was completely different. It would have been like, helping you buy a car at the best possible price. So the entire business has completely just been reinvented over the last couple of years.
That's awesome. Do you have a background in content creation or media? I think a lot of people aspire to like build an audience online and they have like niche expertise, but they don't really know what to do. And I see people fail online all the time. I think one of the mistakes people would make is like they make it too much about them. And obviously you flipped that on its head and you made it about the consumer or how people can learn from you. But yeah, do you have a background in this stuff aside from the expertise?
I don't have a background in it per se. I was always interested in marketing and media. So even as a dealer, our differentiator was always our marketing, right? We were a marketing led organization. Everything, the way we attracted customers and we were selling the same product. I mean, we were selling, look, there was nothing superior about our services. Truthfully, there wasn't. But our marketing was unique. I mean, we did just crazy stunts and, we leaned into really, really deep philanthropy. But everything we did, it was like unique. I mean, I remember one time we were looking for a way to delight customers, and we had a big community of subprime customers, right? Credit, subprime credit. And so I was at dinner with two friends who ended up going to found a massive multi-billion-dollar startup, very successful. And I told them, I said, guys, I said, what can we do that's different, right? Like, how do I tap in to just this local community? And one of my friends said, hey, they said, what if you gave free gifts to everyone? I was like, okay, I mean, that's not that interesting. But then we took it a step further and we said, what if we made it like super, just different? And the next day I called up a company in North Jersey that all they do is sell closeout electronics. So if Walmart gets a bunch of returns, they have nothing to do with these returns. They sell them for, 5 cents on the dollar to some random person who then flips them for 20 cents on the dollar. So I call this guy up and I say, "Hey Benny, I'm looking for some, electronics. I mean, what do you got?" And he's like, "Oh, I got the perfect thing for you." So I buy this pallet, right? Literally a pallet of electronics. They drop them off at my lot a week or two later, and I start going through these things, and there's like microwaves in there, like PlayStations, like the most random shit ever. And I start putting them in people's trunks. And I take my entire sales team. And I'm like,
Oh,
listen,
that's
guys,
cool.
we're gonna do something really weird, but we're gonna take every customer that buys a car and we're gonna sing and dance and say, pop that trunk, pop that trunk, pop that trunk. And they're gonna open a trunk and they're gonna find a random gift. And so we leaned into this, and that literally I mean, that was the driver for like 300% revenue growth over the next 5 years in this
Wow.
business or dealership, because we created this viral marketing stunt in our community that just really resonated with people. So I think if you take those learnings and you port them online, I sort of started out by doing similar things, like looking for ways to, one, bring value, right? I
Hmm.
didn't want to create cheap impressions. I didn't want to just say things to get an impression that fades away the next day and doesn't actually result in any community. But looking for ways to bring value while doing it in a way that is maybe, others would say is not scalable or sort of unique and non-conventional, right? In ways that people are maybe scared to do.
Yeah. So when you first started the account and you were kind of growing it, you're seeing traction. Were you working a full-time job at the time? And did you have inklings of like this could potentially like eventually be a thing? Or did you take it
It
seriously from the
was
beginning?
it was even a step further than that. I was a CEO of a company, and
Wow.
we had like 200 employees. I had raised capital. I was a dealer. And for me, we were going through a very tough time in the business, and our business pivoted from venture capital to pretty much private equity. That's essentially, we were aiming to become profitable and to acquire profitable businesses. We essentially went from creative brand building to like financial engineering. It was just not what I excelled at. It wasn't what I enjoyed. And, as a founder, it's really tough to get up in the morning, put in 14 hours a day when you're just not doing something that you really, really enjoy. You can do it for a period of time, but we were in this trough period for like 2.5 years. And so when I started this account, I was just, just having fun, letting off steam. And that was really the goal. It was just do it that way. I was still the CEO of the dealership, but it was really just let off some steam and share insights. And along the way, I was building an audience, which I thought was cool. I was like, who knows? Maybe, one day I can hire employees from this. I mean, who knows, how it
Yeah.
can, help. But it wasn't a media company or anything. We were literally, I was a Twitter account, and I kind
Yeah.
of built a personality and relationships off the back of my knowledge.
So that's why you started it as like a pseudonymous account, is because you didn't want too much attention around you as like the
I
CEO of
didn't
a
want any
company. And then
attention.
like, yeah.
I didn't wanna, yeah, it was just what benefit, like, it was just stupid, right?
Yeah.
And I had never created content online. So, like, that was a
Oh,
secondary layer of risk and fear. It was like, what if I say something stupid? Do I potentially harm my employees? I mean, who knows? My family. I didn't want that personal attention on myself. So, it was like a cool, low risk way. Not to mention, like, fear of retribution if I say the wrong thing from, like, the industry, right? The industry that I'm in. I didn't know what that would mean. So it was just a very easy way for me to kind of, say what I think without having to fear. And it worked really well for my domain because I was very transparent.
yeah. That's awesome. So I'm a like content guy. I'm a marketing guy, and it's pretty awesome to see like the media empire that you kind of built across, across all different platforms. Can we just break out your audience and kind of, dig into how you grew each one or any tactics that you think worked really well? You kind of covered Twitter a little bit or X, but maybe you just talk about like the audience size and kind of like what's worked since 100K.
Yeah, I think with audiences, you have to really ride the wave of the time, right?
Hmm.
So at the time when I started, or like say early 2022, X Twitter was a great platform to grow organically, algorithmically. If you actually created good value add content, right? Today you need to do like rage bait, talk a lot
Yeah,
about politics. The
it
platform has
sucks.
changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also you could very easily convert your followers to newsletter subscribers. They had this like little review thing,
I
remember, where
remember
you could
that. Yeah.
someone could literally click and you get their email. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable in hindsight. So, I milked that for sure. I mean, I got tens of thousands of newsletter subscribers for that early on. But I'll give you like an overview. I mean, today we're at across my platforms, I don't know, around like 700,000 followers. Here's the key, right? I don't really care about follower count almost at all today. And that doesn't include the newsletter and whatnot, but I care about quality of the follower, right? So I know that within my 700,000 followers, I have, say, 50,000 or so who are either high net worth decision makers of multi-million dollar businesses, dealerships, some billionaires in there, right? Really successful dealers, really successful dealership management, people that manage millions of dollars of budgets annually. Those are the people that I care about, right? I stopped caring about numbers a very long time ago when I
Hmm.
realized that it just doesn't mean anything. Numbers get you to a certain scale, right? They get you to a certain level, but
Yeah.
when you get to that level and people know you, it comes down to quality and retention. And so I don't really, obviously we still track numbers and all that, but it's not where we put most of our emphasis. Our emphasis is on who is our ICP, who is our audience, right? 36 to 48-year-old car dealers, typically second generation. These are people that have an insatiable curiosity. They want to learn more about the industry. They're typically managing anywhere between 2 to 20 dealerships. They're franchise dealers, so they're not independents. This is my target audience today. This is
Hmm.
my ICP, and that's why I create content for. And so all that has really shifted in a big way. But like I said, X was early on. From there, I really expanded horizontally. I launched a newsletter, which has evolved as well. I launched a podcast almost completely accidentally, but Strip Mall guy, another online personality, called me one day, and we were just shooting the shit, and he's like, "Hey, you should try podcasting," like with no strategy again. Um, but for me, the strategy was always throw shit against the wall and then iterate, 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 and then get very, very targeted, right? So there's a massive delta between how I start things, where I just try something without any strategy, and the end state, right? Or call it like, as it evolves, it becomes very strategic, right? Why am I writing this specific newsletter? What value am I providing? Who is it for? Can they get this anywhere else? Why would they consume this content? So the business has evolved like that horizontally, as I mentioned, social platforms, newsletter, podcast, a live show now that is one of our most successful properties in under 2 months. Essentially, if you take TBPN, right, from the tech industry, we've literally created the same thing in auto or something very similar. And it's been a hit because of how news cycles are so compressed and people want real time news in the moment. And so those are, and we have a news site as well, right? We're one of the leading auto retail news sites where dealers literally come just to get industry news. So these are our primary media properties today.
That's awesome. How are you like analyzing and surveying your audience to know, who your ICP is and you're actually funneling them down the line? Is it via like newsletter surveys, or are you using any cool tools to like, dig into your followers across social platforms and seeing who's engaging?
So, a combination of a couple things. I would say a lot of it is not fancy. Just to set that, just very clearly. We do a lot of newsletter polls. First of all, newsletter polls are great. You get real time feedback. You can, spit that out, analyze it in ChatGPT or something. Very
Yeah.
quickly get sentiment analysis, data like that. That's number one. Number two, a very big one for us is just DMs and social listening. Who's DMing me and telling me that they don't know how they ran their dealership without listening to my content previously? Like, who are these people? And as you start getting enough of these, you start, putting the pieces together, and you're like, okay, I can very clearly tell who this helps the most, right? Who gets the most value out of our content. And so, when you put that information together, you combine it with some of the free data that's available, right? Like you can get some demographic data from your newsletter
Hmm.
signups, from your from your podcast, from Spotify for creators. Like you take all, you take all these sources, you piece them together, you start to paint a picture of who your audience really is and who gets the most value out of your content. So it's nothing. I've tried the fancy stuff, like, there's
Yeah.
tools out
Simple always
there
works
like,
better.
yeah, like, I don't know, like Clay, Zoom Info, all these enrichment tools. And I really have tried a lot of them. And like you get some interesting information, but at the end of the day, I mean, simple. Like, we recently created a lead magnet to like download a compensation report for our industry, like how much money people make. And we asked people to give up like their firstborn in order to access this document. Not literally, but it
Yeah.
doesn't cost any money, but you have to tell us about yourself and your dealership and blah, blah, blah. And the amount of information we got from that was just incredible. Like people wanted this document and they were willing to give us a lot of personal information. Now, we're not necessarily doing anything with that information other than analyzing it for ourselves
Yeah.
and understanding better who is our audience and, potentially having a direct contact with that subscriber in the future if, we need that for any reason or we want to, propose something to them.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I use Beehive for my newsletter, and the newsletter sign up is like one of the main calls to action in a lot of things that I do, aside from the podcast. And a few months ago, I put a survey so that every new subscriber had to like fill out that survey. And I kind of forgot that I did that. And I went back to look at it, like literally last week, because I'm working with a growth agency to grow this little empire that I'm doing too. And I looked at the responses, and I was like, holy shit, there's so much information on these people. And one of the last question that I asked was, what's one of the goals that you're working towards, and how can I help you achieve it? And like all
Wow.
of the responses that I got were just like, I can write a newsletter for the rest of my life now, just because of all the different content and even business ideas or tools people want, or like services that I could launch
Dude,
or
I
businesses that I
love
could
that.
launch. And then I asked them like,
Wow.
what best describes you? Are they your founder, a marketer, student, creator? I think I asked for like, birthdays so I could figure out the age range. Just different ways to figure out like, is this like the target audience that I want? Am I kind of missing it on the mark, or should I have to change my copy when I'm positioning myself? So people should do that. Like if you have a newsletter, like just ask basic information about who the person is, so that you can use that down the line when you're going for sponsorships or just kind of creating content.
And so we've done the same thing. Like I would say I added a type form, an automatic redirect. So when you sign up for my
Mm,
Beehive newsletter, automatic you go to a type form. And I added that around like 40 or 50,000 subscribers.
nice.
And today we're at, close to 100,000. So we've got a lot of
Wow.
data, similar to what you say. But I love that question of like, what can I do to bring you value, right? Because
Yeah.
that is powerful. And I'll tell you one more thing that we do. The way we convert really well to this type form, we have about 90% conversion from click to submission, which is strong. The way we do that is we market it as, curate your newsletter, right? So we don't say
Mm,
like fill out the survey. Like no one wants to fill out a fucking survey. We say
yeah.
curate your newsletter so you get the most value. And so what we basically let them do is like, and think about it, it's being honest because if you tell me who you are and what's important to you, or like your title and where you work, I can create better content for you. Right. So the more information I know about my audience, similar to what you said, I can create better content. So the way we just market that is like, hey, curate this in order to get the best newsletter experience. And people are more inclined to fill out the survey because now they know they're actually getting something. They're not just giving up their info and it's going to the abyss.
Yeah, having data on your audience is like so underrated. And I think a lot of people that are trying to do this little media thing, they miss the mark by just building a social audience and focusing too much on the numbers, and not enough on like the qualitative data that you can get very easily by asking a few simple questions. So anybody listening to this, like,
100%.
plug that in. Next, I'd like to break down your business a little bit. We've talked about like the distribution machine, which I think is super valuable, but can we dig into like, essentially how do you make money, and maybe how do you acquire customers or sponsors or whatever the main revenue source is?
Yeah, so we're essentially our business is built on trust, right? We're daily earning the trust of tens of thousands of car dealers and decision makers in this industry. And then we monetize that trust via sponsorships and via cash flowing services, right? Primarily. So if you think about it, today, about like 90% of our revenue, it comes from sponsorships.
Yeah.
We do multi-year sponsorships. We don't really lean into rev share or anything like that. Like we are a B2B media platform, right? We have a very specialized audience that's hard to get to. And you want to play, you got to pay. It's very simple. Like we know the value put in. We invest over $1 million a year into our content alone. And if you want to be in front of that audience, you're paying us. So sponsorships is our biggest one with a very low rev share component. We are introducing a rev share as another separate division, but that's going to be completely separate from that. And then, of course, we have our service businesses. And so, we do go the holdco route where we partner with operators on anything non-media that we think is complementary and serves our dealership audience, and is also not competitive with our sponsors. We essentially partner on these companies. We make investments. So, call it micro PE or whatever you want to call it. But we essentially make investments. We're buying anywhere between 30 to 50% of these cash flowing service businesses, and then we offer that to our audience as well. So that's a really, fast growing part of our business. We have a recruiting company called CDG Recruiting. It's done incredible. It's essentially a, executive recruiting firm for dealerships, management and stuff like that. We also have a company called Nomad Content. And what Nomad does is they essentially they're a full service content agency for dealerships. So if you're a dealer and you want to grow your presence on social media to get more business, you partner up with Nomad and they film for you. They, splice for you, they caption for you, they upload for you, but they do it all within your dealership. So you're getting this like reality TV show content, which converts
Mm.
extremely well for dealers. So that's our other business that we're involved in, right? So that's sort of how we've separated it. And again, both businesses are growing incredibly quickly, but it's also very differently. Whereas one side is sponsorships, the other side is profitable services.
Yeah, you don't have to answer this question if you feel like you're working on a tool or anything. But when I think of like car dealers, I think that kind of like old and stale and not really up with the times in terms of technology. So like, do you see the opportunity for dealerships to use AI for like customer service or sales or just technology that we see online because we're on X all the time and we see these cool things popping up, AI wrappers and all that. A, do you see people, an opportunity gap there? Or B, are you kind of working on something in the back end because you're kind of, up to date with everything?
So first of all, I'll tell you that there is a ton of startups. Y Combinator. Actually, I saw you were at A16Z. They just invested in a big voice AI company in our space, who I'm an investor in as well. So in general, there is a ton of money going into auto tech startups. First of all, one thing I've learned at this company that I didn't necessarily know about myself in my prior company is just stay in your lane. The reason I don't launch these things as like internal divisions and manage people and just rather partner with operating partners and whatnot is because I know what I'm really good at, and that is creating content and media and marketing, right? I don't want to run services. I don't want to run agencies. I don't want to run SaaS businesses. I don't want to build another AI tool. I've had 30 engineers in my last company and I hated it. The point I'm trying to make is like I'm very much focused on my lane. So I don't talk about this often, but I mean, I clearly do a lot of angel investing, right? Because CDG, I mean, as you can imagine, the lead flow is incredible, right? We are the authority in auto retail online. And so all the investors kind of call me, they want to chat with me, and I take all the calls, right? I want to get to know them
Yeah.
and maybe they can, bring us deal flow. But, you know, I probably angel invest in like one company per month. And in very selective cases, I'll take advisory positions as well if I really believe in a company that I can help push it. So that's sort of my way of monetizing what you just said, right? I am involved with several AI companies, and the way I do it is just by way of angel investing, advising, and that is, it's the way I get involved. But I don't run these companies. Like
Yeah.
I stick to my lane, just owning the media and content, and that's how I help these companies.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. So before I decided to like leave full time and A6 and Z in my awesome career that I had and do this whole media thing, I had a one-on-one with one of my best friends who like runs a social media agency for founders. And I basically rolled out my plan to him and I said, this is kind of what I'm thinking of doing. Am I crazy? Is this dumb? Like building a media company. And, I said, there's two options. Either I do this media thing, build like, newsletter, YouTube and all this stuff, podcasts, and just grow it as big as possible, but while, focusing on my niche, which is internet entrepreneurship. Or B, I launched a social media agency for founders, which everybody's kind of doing that. And I could crush it. I could hire a team and I could make a shit ton of money, but I would probably hate it. And I would hate every single day and I wouldn't find it fun. And so I decided to go the first route, which I think is the smarter route. And it sounds similar to what you did and what you're doing now, just with a completely different niche. So yeah, do you have any general advice for me? I feel like I'm still in the infancy phase, where
Mhm.
maybe you were a year and a half, 2 years ago. Still building things out, still trying to figure out, carve out the niche more and more every day.
You know, I think what I've learned in life is that success and outsized outcomes typically occur where various completely separate disciplines converge, right? If you think about it, like my 20s were filled with this experience gathering. I was in the car business, right? Very traditional, kind of rugged, a people business, low-ish tech. Then I was in completely different venture capital, tech-enabled car dealership, investors, engineers, da 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 da. And then I discovered the Twitterverse and then eventually media, right? Which is again is its own world. And so when these three things converge, right? That discipline, this discipline, good things happen because you are a more just differentiated
Different.
thinker in the space, right? You have these different experiences. So I think similar to that, like the only thing I would say is, what do you know? What have you picked up along the way that you can combine these different disciplines to help create some value? So I'll just give you like a dumb example, but bear with me, right? You mentioned that you used to be a DJ at clubs.
Yeah.
I'm totally making this up right now, but like, do you know that space better than anyone else? Like, is there a opportunity to build the social media or digital agency for DJs? And you happen to know the digital world really well, and you happen to know the DJ space really well, and come to find out that there's some need that these DJs have that when they're at a club, they need some software. I don't know. I mean, I'm just making that up, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, I believe that when you combine your disciplines, that's when you create something very special. And so that's just what I've done. Whether by accident or intentionally, it's how I got to this point. And I think that's why CDG has worked. It's because I really do bring industry knowledge, and then I combine it with the modern, new media type of facade and delivery, which has been missing in this industry. So it's a lot of experimentation. I mean,
Yeah.
we're constantly launching new properties, we're sunsetting properties, we're, testing new formats, videos. I mean, our belief is that you have to get 1% better every single day, literally.
Yeah.
Like if you're not testing something today, yesterday we tested a new Instagram type of video style. The day before that we launched a new newsletter. So like we're always testing. And otherwise you're just falling behind. And I can tell you that if you look at this business 2 years ago, it was a completely different beast. I mean, the properties that were the hottest are not today. Like just things are constantly shifting. So just a lot of experimentation and leaning into what you're really great at.
It's funny enough that you said that the DJ example because that's actually something that I've been testing out a little bit. So my three buckets would be internet entrepreneurship, which is kind of this new thing that I'm carving out. The second bucket is like my experience in tech, like working at LinkedIn, A16Z, Snapchat. I did a startup as well. So that's like the second bucket. And the third bucket is just like super random, but like I DJ'd for 10, 11 years. I DJ'd in Las Vegas. I did a tour around the world. And not a
There
lot
you
of people
go.
can say that they have that third bucket. And so what I've been experimenting with is like live events in LA that are like the complete opposite of the traditional tech, mixer meetup where somebody goes up and speaks. It's like we have a DJ there and it's like more of like a party, but it's cool because like the
Mm.
vibe is just way different. So I'm working on one for LA Tech Week. It's gonna be
Nice.
like a morning coffee and house music event. And I already talked to like a few different sponsors and they're like, we love it. Like, how can we like, get on board? Have all the friends that are DJs in LA, and so it's easy to get that locked down. So it's cool that you said have the three different buckets, and one of them should be differentiated, so you're not just like following the same path as everybody else.
Yeah,
Because
you just have to bring together different separate disciplines, or otherwise you're just not going to stand out. You can still make money, but
yeah,
your margins will be compressed. You won't have pricing power, and I mean, it's a more miserable operating experience, frankly. So
yeah,
I think the more you can differentiate yourself like that, I think just the more success that you can, get over time.
yeah, upside's way higher. Can we dig into your like your operation? How I was like,
Sure.
obviously digging doing my research beforehand and I saw that you have the newsletter, you have so much content pumping out. It seems like you have tweets coming out like, almost on the hour, like it's like a lot. So how do you manage it all today? And kind of like what are the key hires that you made for your business?
Yeah, so look, early on, I was the strategy of content back, go back 2 years ago, before ChatGPT really was just ubiquitous. It was all about bespoke. I would put out like 3 pieces of content per day, like 3 tweets, 3
Wow.
LinkedIn posts at most, because it was, the velocity of content on the internet was a lot lower. Then ChatGPT came, right? And by the way, growing this presence before ChatGPT, man, it was freaking hard. I see it today and I'm just like, I can literally, it can know my voice. It can write exactly what I'm thinking in seconds. But this is also why it's a lot tougher to grow, because it's a
Yeah.
lot easier to create content. Anyway, so today our strategy is very different. Today we're putting out, 10 to 15 pieces of content per day. And so it's a lot more volume based because in the era that we're in, it's more about throw more content at the wall and see what sticks, right? You need to create more because the entire internet is creating more content because it's a lot easier to create content using AI.
Yeah.
So the way my business is structured today, we're a team of 14, of which six are
Wow.
full time. Six are full time, and then the rest are contractor, part time, and a combination of the two. In-house, we have sales, content, and editorial. Editorial because we do have a news site, and we actually just got picked up by Google News. So now we literally come up in Google News and, fully authoritative, fully SEO ranked and everything. Took us about, again, a year and a half or even close to
Wow.
2 to make that happen. So we're extremely, excited about that. But we are, that's essentially our core team. Editorial is, it's a legit editorial team. I mean, we're covering industry news. We're being pitched stuff from reporters. I mean, we're running a real news desk for the industry. Sales, of course, we do all of our sales in house. The way my content works, and we're constantly changing and evolving. It's just something I wanted to have control of. I didn't want to outsource my sales function. It was just too important to me, and so all of the sales is in house. And lastly, we also do creative in-house as well. And so as you see, just the way we're evolving our assets, our aesthetic, our website, I mean, everything, it's, we start that in-house. We do leverage outsource, contractors for posting, for podcast editing, anything that's not core or many of the kind of behind the scenes stuff. But the core team is really, really a critical part of the system. So 6 people full time, the remaining are part time and contractors, and also just hiring, very just being very judicious. Like, what do we really need to solve? Do we need someone to solve this, right? Or can we leverage AI? Can we equip one of our team members with some tool? Like, I'm really big into, like, I hate hiring, right? I don't want to hire. And we want to have the Navy SEALs, not the Navy. And so we're
Yeah.
just trying to be very selective and slow when it comes to hiring so that we make sure we're running the leanest team possible.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask is, it seems like you have a really lean team conquering and doing a bunch of work. So what are some of like the key tools that you feel like your business couldn't run without? ChatGPT
I mean,
obviously, but like are there any
yeah, all
specific tools that like
the stack is, I can't think of, it's like we don't necessarily use some crazy tool that's not out there. I think the way we use certain tools though is better because, well, let me explain, right? So obviously we use Beehive for, our Beehive is our newsletter, our news site, and also our news site, as I mentioned. But so that's Beehive for that. We use Podpage for my primary website. So ideally, I'd like to have Beehive and Podpage in one, right? Like
yeah,
podcast news in one. But we're getting there. We're not there just yet. So news site is news, and then all the other media content, job board, all these things is another website. And it also does kind of make sense from an SEO perspective because Google really wants to see a focused news site. ChatGPT, of course, Claude is great for writing, so we use that a ton. Descript for podcast editing. Riverside is where we record, just like we're doing right now. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're using any like esoteric tools or anything like that. And maybe I just can't think of one right now, but it just comes down to the consistency and quality of the content. One of the things we've done, which has been very important in this era of AI, is we used to interview per week, like 2 guests, right, on a podcast, just 2 guests. Today, we interview close to, say, 10 to 15 per week. And the reason we've done that, and it's really important change for our company, is because intelligence has simply gotten commoditized in this age of AI. And what AI does not have is real world in the moment data. AI does not know what you experienced this morning when you got up and went to go buy coffee. AI doesn't know that. And so as we started facing the reality that the industry is catching up to us, and our content is becoming more commoditized, right? We're just regurgitating information that everyone else has. We said our engagement started taking a hit, and so we said, what can we do to differentiate? And that was when we said, what we can do is we can interview more people, do the hard work. It's really difficult to interview, 10 to 15 really high profile people each week. It's super difficult. We
Yeah.
spend an enormous amount of time on getting guests. Like it is a team effort, by the way. I don't have like a single booker on my team. This is
No.
like every single person is trying to get these guests, right? But we spend an enormous amount of time getting guests, and we're creating all this exclusive proprietary information and just news content that no one else has. And so what happens is that we repurpose that across every single channel. And so that, we're able to repurpose our content that we create exclusively, and it's all proprietary, right? No one else has that. And so it gives us a massive edge in our industry, right? We're simply doing the
Yep.
hard work, we're doing more interviews, and then we're able to also trickle that out to our news site, to our social media posts, to our videos, to our newsletter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, simply because it's like we're doing the hard work, which is the interviews.
Yeah, that's awesome. So given that you have such a huge online presence across all your different media properties, how much of your sales is inbound versus outbound? Do you just have a ton of inbound that you can't even, you can't even serve because it'd be, too much and overflow the amount of media that you're pumping out? And then second part of that question is kind of like, then what does your sales team do? Is just kind of handling the deals or finding better deals? So I guess two-part question.
So it's crazy because up until now, it's been 100% inbound. I mean, and it's very atypical for a sales team, right? Especially in like, B2B. I mean, we have had a lot of inbound, and our business we've grown our inventory, incrementally. And so, it was kind of like a balancing act. Like there was almost no reason to prospect because we were just, we were blessed with really good inbound because as being the authority in the space, we are leaning into some outbound now, but very targeted, right? Like if we know we have white space, if we know there's a vertical where we don't have a sponsor or some technology that we really think would be great for dealers that we're not presenting on the platform today, then, that's where we're going to lean into some outbound. So until now, it's just really been all inbound. And a lot of the time we spend on sales is actually trying to understand the sponsor and like what is their goal? What
Mm.
can they bring to the table? Right. And also, what can we do with them to bring more value to dealers? Like, our goal ultimately is to create content that is so freaking good, even if it's sponsored, that dealers love it. Right. And the right sponsor, like we have some sponsors that run, dealership services businesses or like advisory businesses. They're sponsors, but they're so interesting that when they come on the podcast, it's like they're our most viewed episodes, right? Like, who cares if it's a sponsor, if they're educating you and providing value? Cool. So they happen to sell something, but they're giving me value. And so that's where we spend a lot of our time. Our sales team spends a lot of time curating the right sponsor and someone that can not just come on just to sell something, but can come on to add value to the platform. That's ultimately the goal.
Yeah, it reminds me of I don't know if you know Packy McCormick. He writes a newsletter for tech. I
Yep.
don't know if he still does them to this day, but he used to do these like case studies where it's like he made it known it was like a paid case study. So people, founders would pay a certain amount of money. It was a good amount of money to like have their companies be like interviewed or like broken down in a case study. But then as a reader, like it's paid. It's kind of like a shield promo, but it's so interesting because he would like break down the business, give the ins and the outs, that like all the
Yeah.
stuff behind the scenes that everybody in his audience would want to see no matter what. So it was like a triple win for the audience, win for the business, and win for Packy
Yeah.
because he got the money. So it's, and the
Didn't he do
content
ramp
also.
like 4 times or something? I think he
Yeah.
did ramp like 4 times, right?
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
he's
but
a,
by the way, I read some of those, right? Because they're
yeah.
just freaking interesting, you know? And that's the thing, right? Like, good content trumps everything else. Whenever we run into an issue in the company, it's just like, it's the content. There's just no other excuse. I don't care about the aesthetic, the layout, it's the freaking content, right?
Yeah.
And so it always comes down to that. Can you create something compelling?
What's an example of and you don't have to give like the numbers and how much you charge, but like what's an example of like a nice prime sponsorship package that you would work with somebody on? And like what would be like the goal of the package? Is it to acquire customers or, for them?
So it's a combination of some are brand awareness, some are thought leadership, some are,
Yep.
direct conversion, customer acquisition. Packages can range from $2,500 to $600,000. It just really, really depends on, who they are, what they want, what percentage share of voice, right? How much do they want to be on the platform? What level of authority, right? We don't do deals that are like longer than a year. Just doesn't even make sense. We've had offers and opportunities to do seven-figure deals, multi-year deals, but like
Well, it
we're just
doesn't make
growing
sense
quickly.
because yeah, you're gonna grow faster, so
We're
you
just
might be
growing
double the
quickly. Yeah,
size in
yeah.
a
It
year.
doesn't make sense for us to lock in that inventory today, especially not at like a reduced rate, because it just doesn't. We're going to sell it for higher as we grow in 3, 6, 9 months. So we're
Mhm.
just not interested in that. But that's kind of the ranges of packages. Again, it's all over the map. Depends on the partner. We have what goes into that, of course, is we invest a lot of money back into our content team, all across the board, right? To make sure that we're continuing to grow the brand, the presence, to grow the audience as well. When these sponsors sign up with us, they're coming in at a certain level of audience, and then and historic. I mean, we've only been around for a couple of years, but it just keeps growing, right? So they're actually getting the benefit of the doubt over time as we're continuing to scale, which is why we don't lean into like super long term deals.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, we could be more expensive on certain things. We could probably be cheaper on some, but we know our value. We know that we have a very special audience that is very engaged. That's the key word. It's engaged because this audience. It's not to say that they aren't subscribed maybe to other newsletters and stuff, but do they
They
read them?
trust you.
Right?
Yeah.
When you look at our shares at our Beehive, how many people have shared this, which is a really important benchmark for me. I mean, the names you see on there, I'm talking like the biggest dealers, and so they're engaged because they're forwarding your newsletter, right? Like that
Yeah.
is what you want to see. And so at the end of the day, if you are selling an ERP for dealers, right? In our industry, it's called a DMS, and that ERP, that the lifetime value of that customer is millions of dollars. Why would you not pay tens of thousands, potentially even, hundreds of thousands in order to acquire that customer? Of course you would. Of course you would. It would be stupid not to. Which is so I mean, I think the lesson there is, it's helpful to be in an industry where there's money in it, right? Because naturally, like, you can, get your share. But at the end of the day, again, it comes back down to, you need to continue creating compelling and engaging content, which is it's just where I spend most of my time, right? I spend most of
Mhm.
my time on creating the most compelling type of stuff. So that's roughly where the average packages go. But again, it really
Yeah.
varies all over the map.
I was gonna ask you, like, as you've grown your presence, I'm assuming a lot of copycats, kinda launch and try to, like, ride your wave as well. Like, how have you then continued to differentiate yourself aside from the content? And it kinda sounds like you're positioning yourself as kinda like the prime, like if there's 3 tiers, you're in the 3rd tier of brand, trust, and cost. Kinda like outcost or, outcost others. But is there anything that I'm missing there? Like, if there's others that are, like, copying the same exact style as you, the same exact media, and going after the same customers, like, how are you continuing to differentiate?
So surprisingly, there are two incumbents in my space that have been really, they've been trying to just copy many of the things we're doing. And not upstarts, actually incumbents, because again, it's
Mm,
a really tough audience to gain, and so it makes sense that the incumbents would kind of be, kind of chasing us. And you see it, like, you see that they're trying to make their newsletter more like ours, their podcast, their social content. I mean, it's obvious, right? But again, that stuff is all commoditized, and at a certain point, they're going to catch up to us. Yes, we have our own taste and our brand, and I think that our attention to detail is higher than any competitor. It just simply is. You look at our website, you look at everything. I mean, we really pay attention to the details and the design. The design is really important for us. Our newsletter is beautiful. I take pride in that. We spend a lot of money designing that newsletter. It's bold. It's colorful. It's fun, right? So cool. So can they technically copy that stuff? I mean, they could. It's not their aesthetic. Their brands don't have personality, but sure they could. But what they can't copy at the end of the day is our content, right? They can't do I mean, they can try, good luck, but like or I should probably say it that way. They can do it, but like good luck creating the type of content we're creating at the velocity that we're creating. It's just hard. So like can they do it? Yeah, they can. They could technically. But
yeah.
as you know, media is all about consistency, putting in the reps every single day. And so that's our moat, really. Our moat is our ability to execute and continue executing day in and day out with and bring in high quality content. Everything else is commoditized. And if it's not, it will be very soon. So, that's kind of where we hang our hat on.
Yeah, I have and listeners of the podcast are probably like rolling their eyes right now because I always say this, but I have a thesis that I've been working on, and this is the reason why I quit my full-time career to kind of do this whole media thing. That as AI gets better at replacing damn near everything, brand and distribution is the ultimate moat for builders and people who want to, make money online. And you're a perfect example of that. So like, yes, you can out execute others, and maybe they can build a team and out execute you. But aside from distribution, I think what you have that's special is the brand. Like you have car dealership guy. Like when I see that brand evolving and continue to grow, it just only becomes stronger and stronger and stronger the more that you build trust with your audience. So if it were up to me and I had to like, go between two different brands, it's you and then it's another one that has a bigger audience or maybe they're just putting out more content, I'll still go with you because of the brand. So
And that's
yeah,
the
I
goal,
think
right? Like that's
yeah.
the goal, to build affinity, to build trust, to build connection, right? To do it authentically. I think the one thing that's unique about us that the other brands don't have is we have a face, right? And I'm the face. We've diversified a lot from that. Like, I have 2 podcast co-hosts now. So my share of voice on the podcast has gone down from like 100% to, at most 50%, right?
That's
There's
good though. You
plenty of
have to
other
scale
voices.
yourself somehow.
Exactly, right? Our editorial team writes, a large percentage of our content. I still am, call it executive editor of a big chunk of it, but there's also a big chunk of it that I don't even look at. Right? So it just depends what it is. We've scaled this thing very slowly, very incrementally, and we have a face ultimately to the brand. And I think
I
that
love
is
that.
that is important, right? A lot of the bigger companies, maybe they're private equity backed, maybe they have, 50 other companies they're overseeing. They just don't have that privilege, right? The CEO of the parent company, like, can he really be in the day-to-day week? Does he even want to do that?
Yeah,
So
and
I think
especially
that's the
considering
kind
that
of
the CEO might get swapped out, and whereas like you're the
yeah,
owner of the business, you're going to be the face of the business no matter what.
it's my baby,
Can't be
right? It's
swapped
like
out.
it's me.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think that's a nice advantage that, you're able just to lean in as a founder and, really cultivate this incredible thing for people. That's like it's sort of a byproduct of my personality. I mean, it is my personality if you think about it. You look at the
Hmm.
platform and like the mannerism, it's me essentially in media form.
Yeah. Well, those are the best brands, right? It's like the founder like pushed out times 1,000 or 1,000,000 in different ways. So you just scale yourself as best as possible using technology, which you've
Yep.
figured out. I have a couple of fun questions, and I'll let you go. So,
Sure.
are there any cars that you think are extremely underrated or underpriced or just like well positioned right now? I think the Tesla Model Y is like really like underpriced for the value that you get, but are there any others?
Underpriced? Wow. That's a
Or
tough one
well
because
priced
everybody's
or people like
nothing's
overlooked?
underpriced. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the Model Y is a great vehicle. I think in general, used electric vehicles under 25,000 can still benefit from the tax credit, the $4,000 tax credit, which is going away end of September. So I think those are, pretty attractive deals in today's market because you can literally get $4,000 from the government towards a vehicle. And it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I know you've probably done thousands of threads on this, but any general advice for people looking to buy a car that people probably don't do? Like, advice that they don't take or research that they don't do?
Yeah, I mean, look, optimize for, end of month, end of quarter. Typically, dealers want to hit volume targets, so you may get a better deal. I say you may because not every manufacturer incentivizes volume targets. So if they don't, then there's no benefit to go end of month or end of quarter. Bring a trade in if you have one. Dealers will likely sweeten the deal for you because they get to double dip, right? They get to
Mm,
buy your car and they get to sell you a car and sell your trade. And so if I'm making, let's just say hypothetically, I'm making $3,000 profit on each car. Well, now in total, it's 6,000. I'll take 4,000 total, 5,000. Like, I'll take a less absolute number, right? So I think in general, having a trade, if you have that, yeah, it's added value. Research the right salesperson in advance. Don't just walk into a dealership. Find the best salesperson and work with them because you will have a meaningfully different experience than if you work with the worst salesperson. So don't research the dealership necessarily. Research the actual salesperson within the
mm,
reviews. That's
interesting.
important. And lastly, start the process obviously before you get to the dealership. Like, get educated, understand what you want, get numbers over text, over the phone. Just get smart before you go to the dealership. Get actual numbers because the best transparent dealers will gladly operate with you that way. And you want to work with someone that will, support that. And so don't just, walk up to the dealership. Rather do some research in advance, call them up, text them, and, start to get numbers that way, you'll just be better positioned. I mean,
Yeah.
it's 4 very kind of simple things, but they really do work and make a, whole different experience.
What about financing? Is it best to kind of like pay cash up front, put half down, work with the credit union to get like a lower, percentage? I know dealers have known to be sharky in terms of like having high, interest rates. But any general advice there? Let's say you do have the cash to be able to pay it up in front. Do you just buy it outright, or do you put some money into the stock market and see it grow?
It's a personal decision. I think buying it outright is probably more cost effective and better value in the long term. In the short term, probably want to lease. If you just want to drive something new and you want to, deploy less capital overall. Dealers actually don't control those interest rates, assuming they're working with a third party lender, which, 99% of dealers do. And so those come from third party lenders. But look, similarly, I think shop your lenders, shop your lenders, understand, what rates can you get where. Dealers do have an incentive for you to lend with them, right? Because they'll make a little bit more money. So, again, factor that into the equation, right? What are you getting elsewhere, and what is the dealer offering you? And if you are going to finance with the dealer, then maybe you could ask for a little bit of a better deal.
Yeah.
So take that into consideration. I mean, today, lending is at least 50% of the profit. Lending and, of course, the added products sold during lending are at least 50% of the profit on a car sale,
Wow.
right? And so if you do the math, I mean, it's a very
I didn't
important
know that.
part in a dealership. I used to say, we're not dealers, we're not vehicle salespeople. We are warranty salespeople disguised as vehicle salespeople because it's literally become such a dominant part of the car sale.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite car, or what kind of car do you drive? Anything interesting or fun?
So we're a Toyota Sienna household, three kids over here under 5. So I had an Audi Q7. I had an Audi Q7 and then which I loved,
Just
like
didn't
a
fit.
S model. And then we're just
Yeah.
like, yeah, we need like a Sienna. It's so comfortable with kids. I always say this, like I don't really care for cars. I never cared for cars. I love the
That's
business and
so
like,
crazy.
selling cars.
Yeah.
Um, you know what I mean? But like the actual vehicles themselves, like I'm so jaded to it. It's like nuts and bolts to me. You know what I mean? When you see these things like as line items on a P&L or something, it's like it almost doesn't mean anything to you. So like people are like, "Oh, when are you getting your Porsche 911?" Da, da, da. I'm like, I mean, whatever. Like, I
It's a
guess
vehicle. It's a
one day.
tool. Yeah.
Are you into cars?
Not too much. I have a 1998 Japanese camper van that I shipped from Japan, and I've kind of been working
Nice.
on. So it's just kind of like my hobby car. I drive a Jeep. We're probably gonna swap the Jeep and get like a Mercedes Sprinter van and build it out so it could be like a dual car, like functional.
That's
I like
cool.
functional cars, things that I could use, take off road or like take on trips that like you can turn into experiences.
And where do
Um,
you live? What area?
Southern California. So we have
Okay,
plenty of
so
areas to explore.
a
We have
lot
the
of
desert, we have
nature.
the
Yeah,
beach, we
a
have
lot of nature.
national
Yeah,
parks. Yeah.
very cool.
So the
That's
reason why I
awesome,
asked some
man.
of these questions is selfishly because I'm probably gonna get a Sprinter van next and try to figure out like how to
They're
do
hot,
it
man.
best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
When we were at the peak of COVID, we put a couple purchase orders to buy those like Carvana delivery vehicles, those
yep.
Isuzu tow trucks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I
Completely
was looking
different
at those. Those are
topic.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you can customize them obviously, but they're like commercial trucks. I don't know why I just thought of those, but it was I just remember they had like a 1-year waiting list because like everyone was trying to get them because you don't need like a truck driver's license to drive them. You could
Yeah, you
literally
don't.
just use any normal driver's license. Again, they're commercial trucks for like delivery and all that, but it was funny. I just remember there's like a 1-year waiting list. All these like, esoteric vehicles and stuff are like super in
Yeah.
demand.
Yeah,
So
if you saw my Japanese camper van, you'd be like, "Whoa, I've never seen anything like that before." And it was
send me a
it was a whole
picture. Yeah.
process to get it over here and registered and all that.
Love
The
that.
last question that I have for you, and I'll get you out of here. Um, we talked about the business, the distribution, the outlets, how you kind of run your operation, how you make money, your entire process there. But are there any misconceptions about your business and things that people should know about if they're thinking about doing something similar in a different niche?
Misconceptions. I mean, I think the misconception is that you can't make money, truthfully. Like I still run into like family members and friends and it's funny. They're like, "Oh, like are
Is
you
this a
making
real
any money from
job?
that?" Yeah, is this a real job? And I think if you're just like a creator who's dependent on one platform and you're doing these like, $300 deals on Instagram, like that's not a real job. That's, probably not going to make money that way. But I think if you really think kind of value first, right? Get to know your audience. What can you drive for them? What can you deliver? I think you could really build something very meaningful. So I think the misconception is that, you can make money, and you can scale these things. Oh, that's another thing that people told me. They're like, "Oh, you'll never be able to scale it because it's you're the car dealership guy." I'm like, "Well, you're wrong. Like, look, motherfucker, you're wrong. Like, we're scaling. We have an editorial team. We have podcast co-hosts. We have, so I think just don't listen to anyone. Like, have a very vision, have a great vision, be stubborn, and I mean, good things happen, right? You can make money, you can scale. It doesn't. You can start as a creator, as I have, but you can scale into a real media business or something else if you'd like to do that over time. So that's, in my opinion, that is probably the biggest misconception.
Dope. Thank you, dude. I feel like that spoke directly at me. So other people, benefited from that, then that's a plus one. So
Good.
thank you. Appreciate the time today, man.
Thanks, brother, and thanks for what you're doing. It's just awesome. You seem very curious, and I mean, wish you best of luck, man. You got a really sweet platform.
Thank you, dude. Appreciate it.